Russia's downfall has just begun in the heart of Moscow's financial district as red numbers bled across trading screens and empire began to burn. The night of October 8, 2025 was not an ordinary market correction. It was the moment Russia's economic illusion collapsed in real time. Within hours, more than $160 billion vanished from the Moscow exchange. The ruble tumbled, and investors from Beijing to Berlin fled without looking back. The so-called fortress economy, built on oil, fear, and propaganda, cracked under its own weight. This was not a Western strike, not a cyber attack, but something far more devastating, a global loss of trust. And if this was how fast Russia's markets could fall, what happens when the collapse spreads from the trading floor to the foundations of the entire state? The answer lies in trust collapsing faster than any missile could. On the night of October 8, 2025, the MOX Russia index plunged over 4% in a single session, the sharpest drop in 3 years, erasing roughly 1.3 trillion rubles in market value. Money began fleeing faster than the government could react, and in the first 5 months of 2025, Russians moved nearly 141 billion rubles into foreign broker accounts, a surge of almost 60% compared to the year before. Foreign direct investment in non-financial sectors collapsed by more than 57% over just 3 years, leaving total accumulated FDI at the lowest level since 2009. The Kremlin's fortress economy, built to resist sanctions, cracked under pressure, not from a direct attack, but from the departure of money and belief. Regulators attempted to contain the flight by reimposing capital controls and by publicly declaring that data on foreign inflows was unreliable. For investors from Mumbai to Shanghai, the message was unmistakable. Russia was no longer safe. And if the finance minister is now guarding empty vaults, who will trust the banks to fund the war machine or protect the savings of ordinary citizens? The answer began long before the market crashed, buried in a system that mistook control for stability and illusion for strength. For decades, the Kremlin built its economy like a pyramid, balanced on loyalty, oil, and secrecy. Corruption wasn't an exception, it was the structure itself. According to Transparency International, Russia ranked 141st out of 180 countries in 2024, a position worse than it held a decade earlier. Each bribe and each rigged contract corroded investor confidence until the foundation itself began to rot. When oil prices surged after the invasion of Ukraine, the illusion of prosperity returned. Moscow posted record current account surpluses above $220 billion in 2022. But by mid-2025, those surpluses had vanished, replaced by a $24 billion deficit, the first in years. What looked like resilience was only momentum from the past, burning away as sanctions tightened and imports collapsed. The economy survived not because it was strong, but because it was consuming itself. Behind the facade of full employment and patriotic slogans, productivity was shrinking. The World Bank reported that Russian labor output has fallen by more than 6% since 2021, one of the steepest drops among major economies. Manufacturing growth has turned negative, while real wages stagnate even as inflation hovers above 8%. The Kremlin continues to raise defense spending beyond 40% of its entire budget, draining every spare ruble from schools, healthcare, and infrastructure. And if the war has swallowed the nation's wealth, how long before it swallows its people's faith too? The answer is visible in the streets of Russia's industrial towns, where workers once trusted that a paycheck, a pension, and a promise of stability would carry them through. Now they wonder if any of those things remain. A record low official unemployment rate of 2.2% in mid-2025 masks a deeper reality of hidden joblessness, part-time hours, and unpaid leave as companies struggle to adapt. In a quiet conference room in Siberia, regional officials admit that manufacturing plants have cut shifts and delayed wages because orders from abroad vanished and replacement parts from the West were banned. One major auto plant moved to a 4-day workweek, not by choice, but by survival. Families in these towns live off savings that evaporate, pensions that stretch thinner, and hope that dims with each month. Migration away from home grows as younger workers seek futures elsewhere and demographics shrink. The labor minister warns of a shortfall of 10.9 million workers by 2030. A number that signals a country running out of people as well as money. And if the people who built Russia's economy are now fighting just to keep what little remains, who will rebuild it when the dust settles? The answer is already taking shape. Russia is not merely losing a battle, it is heading towards systemic collapse, and the world is beginning to feel the tremors. With oil revenues dropping, energy exports plunging, and foreign investment drying up, Moscow's economic foundation is slipping away. In September 2025, state oil and gas sales fell about 23% year-on-year, cutting one of Russia's largest revenue streams. Budget documents show the federal deficit for 2025 is expected to reach 2.6% of GDP, the largest shortfall since the pandemic-hit year of 2020, and rising military spending leaves little for anything else. The Kremlin plans to reduce fiscal stimulus in the coming years, while relying ever more on borrowing and drawing on reserves that are shrinking fast. At the same time, real economic growth has flatlined. The International Monetary Fund recently cut its forecast for Russia's GDP growth in 2025 to just 0.6%, signaling a high-risk drift rather than a recovery. Russia's model, once built on energy exports and state control, no longer delivers. Productivity is falling, demographics are collapsing, and innovation has stalled. But the damage is not confined within Russia's borders. Global energy markets are shifting as consumer nations search for alternative sources and companies avoid Russian risk and supply chains begin to reroute around instability. When Russia cannot sell at full price, cannot export reliably, and cannot draw foreign capital, the shock spreads. The world, to some degree, becomes less stable. So if Russia's trust is gone and its economy hollowed out, how long before the silence inside Russia's markets becomes the tremor that cracks the foundations of a global economy built on fragile trust?